that in a fairly succinct way.
Sure. So we forked back in May 2017. We forked from Z Classic, actually, and we did that to take the ZK Snark library, which is for zero-knowledge proofs. So a fork is basically where a GitHub repo is cloned and then built upon to create a new project. Simple as that.
Right. Okay. And so how's it been going? ZenCash, what have you added feature-wise?
So one of the first things we did was try our best to implement some level of censorship resistance. So distribute our ledger as best as possible through a node network. And then on top of that node network, start to layer encryption. So all the intra-node communications are encrypted. So that was kind of the first thing we layered on top. We then started developing applications. So the first three were a messaging application using ZK Snarks. So that allows one-to-one.
So ZK Snarks are kind of the special sauce.
Yeah, they're the kind of core privacy technology that makes a lot of what we've built so far possible.
Core privacy technology. So it gets back to one of the, Zcash, that's their kind of their call to action there. It's a privacy, and so it's in the same camp as Monero, right?
Sure.
The privacy, it's kind of like an iterative coin and trying to take new technologies. And so the other features you have is the privacy is opt-in or opt-out?
It's optional. That's what I was going to say. That's the big difference between us and, say, Monero, for example. So Monero use a kind of jumbling technique to prevent people linking transactions and addresses together. Whereas we have zero-knowledge proofs, which is optional, so you can transparently send Zen, or you can do it in a shielded way that means that the ledger just has a kind of timestamp, so you won't see the sender or receiver, and you won't see the amount.
So, politically speaking, now crypto has come on the radar of different governments, different regulators, different agencies, and sometimes they would highlight these privacy coins, and they'll say Dash, or they'll say, Monero and Zcash, and they kind of, put them in a different category. How are you guys reacting to that?
So we're very regularly painted with the kind of evil privacy coin brush. However, privacy is essential to kind of everyday life. Without privacy, it would be very difficult to do business for a start. In a competitive landscape, if your competitor can see the contents of your bank account and the contents of your transactions, then you don't have any competitive edge. So we're firm believers in what we're doing. We're doing it for the right reasons, and we're providing it in a kind of clean, transparent way, providing privacy in a transparent way. There you go.
So censorship resistance is one of the key
super important
points here. It's a part of the Bible of Bitcoin, of course. Censorship resistance and immutability and other features of it is what defines it. And it didn't have the kind of privacy features that some thought that they could improve upon, because, of course, everything is transparently on the blockchain.
Sure.
So, it's a terrible place to do crime, actually, because
Absolutely.
there's a record of it,
yeah.
if that were your intention. But censorship resistance and privacy, it's hard-coded into the Constitution of the United States, right? We have this right. We have a human right. So, in the case of money, in the white paper, it says a peer-to-peer network for cash. Yep. Does that refer to an attempt to compete with Visa, or is it to refer to an attempt to recreate the anonymity of a cash transaction using paper money? Your thoughts?
So it's both. So ultimately, we want to make ZenCash as usable as physically possible. And to do that, we need to be toe-to-toe as far as transactional throughput goes with the likes of Visa to really have any kind of mass market impact and make it really useful. But we also want to really implement the ability to create confidential transactions as well as transparent transactions.
But can it really be both? Because, Bitcoin has a whole scaling debate, and, it's slow to scale, and then all these altcoins came into existence.
Sure.
And so, because it seems like there's a bit of, the missions are at odds with each other. It's like you can't have one without the other. I know, but anyway, that's the goal. Right now, let's get into a bit of controversy here. So, you were hit with a 51% attack.
We were indeed, yes.
Okay. This has been, talked about and feared in the Bitcoin community for years.
Yep.
Now, it's happening. So explain to the audience what a 51% attack is, and talk a little bit about what happened, and then what was the reaction.
Yeah, so on June the 2nd, we were already monitoring our blockchain. So there are a number of rental hash power sites in circulation just now, and the amount of available hash power for our network has hugely mushroomed. Because of that, we're kind of on high alert. So a 51% attack is where someone controls the majority of the network and through that control, they're able to inject fraudulent blocks into the chain. And by doing that, they can effectively undo transactions they create on the main chain. So the kind of Satoshi consensus is that if two miners find blocks at the same time, whoever builds a block on top of their chain first becomes the legitimate chain. So if you can amass enough hash power to do that at a faster rate than the main net of any proof of work coin, then you can effectively attack it in that way, which is a pretty large vulnerability, and it's a vulnerability that hasn't been tackled for any real proof of work coin. Anything Bitcoin derived has the same vulnerability, if you like. So things have changed massively. When Satoshi wrote that paper, everybody was mining on CPUs and small GPUs, and it was very decentralized. And even as Bitcoin started to grow, the capital cost of launching an attack would be so big that the incentives weren't really there.
Yeah, so take a step back, put this into perspective. So when Bitcoin was launched, it was open to a 51% attack. If anyone thought this would amount to anything. The charm of Bitcoin in the early years was that nobody thought it would be anything.
Exactly.
It's just geek money.
Yep.
It's like
it's magic internet money.
Magic internet money.